All right, welcome to the Ironwood Strength Show. Gonna tackle a subject here that's I don't even know. It's sort of a hot button issue. At least it is for me. Um, don't know how many. Some people obviously care about it. Your online gurus or your online quarterbacks, if you will. They like to get on. Someone will post a video and they like to get on there and say, "Oh, they're cheating because they did this or they did that." So the one I'm going to tackle today, and I had an episode a little while back called "Bench Critics and Bosu Balls" that kind of it got into this a little bit with arching in the bench. Well, I'm going to go the same direction with today the sumo deadlift. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, check out that video titled "Bench Critics and Bosu Balls." I may try to do something similar on that line, just focusing on bench. But today, sumo deadlift. I see this all the time. I've heard this. Sumo deadlift is cheating compared to the conventional deadlift. And these are people that are kind of, I guess, maybe they're purists. I don't know. In my mind, they need to wake up, because I'm going to tackle this from a few different issues. But first, let's just look at what cheating is and how is sumo deadlift cheating. So in powerlifting, which is a sport and has rules, no matter which federation you lift in, there are rules that are or should be being held up or being governed or enforced. Enforced is a better word. Enforced by the judges. So there's 3 judges. The rules are plainly written for whatever federation you lift in. The rules are clearly defined in a rule book, and those rule books are posted online for every federation. You should, anytime you compete in a powerlifting meet, whatever federation you're going to be in, you should be getting that rule book before you ever go to competition and reading it thoroughly. So when you read the rules for deadlift, there is no rule saying you can't pull sumo. There is a rule that says your feet cannot touch the plates. Okay, so your feet can't be so wide that they touch the plates on either side, or your shoes cannot touch those plates. As long as the lifter doesn't put his feet on those plates, he's not cheating. Okay, he can go as narrow as he wants or as wide as he wants. It does not matter. All right, he just has to keep his feet within the width of those plates. And why you'd want it wider, I don't know, because if you go wider, when you bring the bar down, even if you put your feet right at the edge of the plates, if they slide just a little bit and you come down with the bar, you're going to be smashing your toes, and it's probably could be a trip to the hospital. So just going by the rules, sumo deadlift is not cheating. Now, let's take this another step further. Really, what those people, I think, are saying is that by pulling sumo, it's easier and allows you to lift more weight than what you could lift if you were lifting conventional. And to a point, I guess they're right, but they're not. Okay, they're not right. But I'm gonna go the direction of them being right first. So most people, when they go to competition, they pull sumo because that is what they're better at. They pull conventional because that is what they're better at. So if you're better at conventional, you're not going to go to a competition and pull sumo. One, you're an idiot if you do that. It makes no sense at all. So it's the same for a sumo puller. They're better at sumo, so they're not going to go to a competition and pull conventional. That makes no sense. Okay? They're going to pull in the manner or with the technique that allows them to lift the most weight. You can go the same direction for how high or how low you have your hips in the conventional deadlift or the sumo deadlift. Some lifters leave their hips really high, don't use a lot of leg drive, use a lot of low back strength, hamstring strength. Some sink their hips down lower, use a lot of leg drive, and to a certain point, not as much low back strength as someone that leaves their hips higher. So does that mean someone that leaves their hips higher is cheating compared to someone that bends their knees more and uses more leg drive? No one ever says that. Okay, the same is true for sumo. All right, the reason people are better at pulling sumo versus conventional is because they have stronger hips, stronger glutes, okay, which allows them to pull with that wider stance better. Okay, therefore, that's what they do. People that pull conventional typically have stronger low back. Okay, therefore, they're going to pull conventional. Now, okay, if you flip that and say, you're a great conventional puller, but from now on, you have to pull sumo. They probably can't pull as much, and they may never pull as much, okay, because they don't have the strength to pull from a sumo position. And the same is true for sumo. So it's not that they're cheating, it's that they're utilizing, they're taking advantage of where they're strong. I've seen numerous people that pull conventional that can't pull sumo at all. Okay, so that blows that theory out of the water that it's automatic that you're going to lift more weight if you're pulling sumo. You're not. One, sumo is a technical lift. You have to train it, you have to be good at it. Number two, the strength involved in sumo, the musculature that's involved that you have to be strong at or strong with is different in sumo than conventional. Okay? So, and the leverage is different. You have different leverages that you're working with based off leg length, based off femur length versus lower limb length, versus the flexibility is different. Some people can't even get into a sumo position because their flexibility in their groin and their hips, and even some in their knees, doesn't allow them to pull sumo. Okay, so really we need to look at these two things as being different. If you really want to break this down, look at where most of the world records are. To my knowledge, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't keep up with every record that's being set, especially for the bigger guys. To my knowledge, as of right now, most of the world records, the top lifts, have been done conventional. So if the top lifts are being done conventional and people are pulling sumo, and that makes them automatically so much better, that theory kind of gets blown out of the water, because sumo's not what typically brings the highest numbers. But again, people are gonna lift according to what they're better at, not just stuck in this mode of everything has to be conventional because that's the way people want it. Okay? People deadlift in a certain manner because that's where they've built their strength, or that's where they naturally have strength. So that's the route that they take. Okay, the next thing, and I've seen this in myself. Okay, I've seen it in other lifters. For me, building up my sumo deadlift for a long time, which I was a fairly decent sumo puller when I was at my best before the injuries set in. I pulled at 220. I pulled 573 multiple times in the gym, completely raw, belt only. Multiple times in the gym. And that was actually going down below 220 as well, just not in the 198 class. And in competition, at 220. I believe I was weighing probably in the 210 range when I did this. I'd have to look it up to make sure. I pulled 600. I had it locked out. I have a picture of me pulling 600 and have it locked out raw, and dropped it before I got the down command. So it didn't count. My best raw pull in competition is 560 something. I jumped about a 50-pound jump to get to that 600, which is why my PR is not in competition. So when I was at that point, and I never competed in gear when I was at my highest. I was competing in gear prior to being at my best and after I was at my best, but not in that prime range when I was pulling my best. So for me to build my sumo deadlift, and I did some wide stance stuff. Obviously, I worked on technique, or I guess it's not obvious, but I did work on technique. But to build the sumo deadlift, I utilized a lot of exercises with a close stance, being conventional deadlift variations, conventional deadlift itself, conventional deadlift off blocks, conventional deadlift from a deficit, conventional deadlift with bands. I did a lot of conventional pulling to build my sumo deadlift. Why? Because it targeted my weaknesses. One of my big weaknesses was my low back. One of my big weaknesses now is my low back. So as I built up my conventional pulls and my low back got stronger, my sumo also went up. Okay, but my conventional deadlift never ever caught my sumo deadlift, even though I pulled primarily in training conventional. Good mornings with a closer stance, with probably closer to a conventional deadlift stance. Good mornings built my sumo deadlift. RDLs with a conventional deadlift stance, a narrow stance, built my sumo deadlift. Okay. The things that built my sumo typically were a narrow stance variation of a deadlift. Being conventional deadlift variations, being good mornings, being RDLs. And yes, I did do some wider stance as well, but the bulk of my training came from a narrow stance. I've also seen it in lifters going the opposite direction. Okay, the lifters that pull conventional and they're starting to kind of hit they do all their training conventional, everything with a narrow stance. They start to hit kind of a plateau. They start bringing in wider stance things. Name specifically sumo deadlift variations. It builds their weaknesses that they weren't building with the narrow stance. It builds those weaknesses, the glutes, the hips, okay, even some of the upper back strength that's just being trained in a different way. And the result of that is that their conventional deadlift actually goes up, okay, sometimes quite considerably, because they're building their weaknesses through the opposite style variation of the deadlift. So this notion that, with everything I just said, the notion that sumo deadlift is cheating should be tossed aside, thrown in the trash. It's not cheating. It's optimizing your strengths, okay? Completely within the rules, and you can't flip it. People that are good at conventional aren't necessarily good at sumo. Okay, that's why they pull conventional. So they get to pull the way they want to pull, and sumo deadlifters get to pull the way they want to pull. Completely within the rules, not cheating. Now, just one final point to this. If you're not in competition, there are no rules. Okay? So you can't sit there, someone can't sit there and say, you're cheating. Well, you don't compete. There are no rules. How are you cheating? You're not. All right? Sumo deadlift is not cheating. A lot of the people that are saying that probably couldn't pull sumo to save their lives. And if they do pull sumo, if they're a competitor and they pull more sumo than conventional, but they're sticking to conventional, because sumo, in their mind, sumo's cheating. They're just stupid. All right, they need to get out of that old mindset and catch up with the times and really understand training. Anyway, that's it for today. Ironwood Strength Show. If you like what you see here, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and of course, anyone that you think might be interested in these shows or this show, please share it with them so they can see it as well.